Alright, so we're back here at Del Mar Boulevard, and if you were here last week, we talked about how this street is really important to the history of St. Louis. That on one side of the street, these beautiful, wonderful homes, and on the other side of the street are homes that are beat up and smaller and aren't worth nearly as much money, and so much of that is because 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago, banks got together and said, we aren't going to sell nice homes on this side of the street to people whose skin is darker. It was literally written into the law, you are not allowed to sell a home on this side of the street to people who are black. And so then the people who couldn't live in those homes had to go live in those homes, and they just weren't as nice. You know what's interesting is that when you look at the statistics between these two neighborhoods on the opposite sides of the same exact street, you could throw a baseball from one side of the street to the other. The average level of education is like 12 years lower on one side than the other. The average income of a house, how much money they make, is like $50,000, $60,000 less. And it's not by accident. It's not because people are lazy. It's not because people on one side of the street worked harder than the other side. It's because laws were passed that didn't give people the same opportunity. And over years and years and years, the gap between the two sides of this street got wider and wider and wider. It's what injustice looks like. Now, those laws don't exist anymore, but the gap still remains. So we're talking about the story of the Good Samaritan. And last week we left off where this man was walking down this road to Jericho, and some robbers came upon him and beat him up and took everything he had and left him naked in the road, just trying to hang on. And this priest and a Levite, these two super religious people, they're like the pastors of the day, the bishops, you can call them the Pope if you want, they come up on this man and they go around him. They pass him. And instead of helping him, instead of checking on him, they just go around. And then a third person comes up to this man. And all we know about this guy is that he's a Samaritan. Now, here's what you need to know about Samaritans. Samaritans and Jewish people, like Jesus was a Jew, he was talking to Jewish people. They were like mortal enemies. Like, these two people did not get along, and there's like hundreds of years of background behind that. But imagine sort of like someone wearing a MAGA hat to a Black Lives Matter rally, or someone wearing a Statesman jersey to a Kirkwood football game. These things are like, they don't mix. Mizzou and Kansas, or Mizzou and Illinois, you get the deal. Like, just people who do not get along. Swifties, non-Swifties. And so Jesus says, a Samaritan passes by. And the Jewish people he's talking to would have been like, oh, I'm not a Samaritan. Nobody good can be a Samaritan. And it says the Samaritan kneels down and helps the man. He checks on him. And it says he throws him over his donkey and takes him to the next closest town and gets him some help. The Levite and the priest, they didn't do anything about this problem. But the Samaritan did. The Samaritan bends down, picks him up, and gets him where he needs to go. But Samaritans weren't supposed to be the heroes of any story for the Jewish people. They were the bad guys, and yet this Samaritan stops to help somebody in need. You see, for Jesus, it wasn't just enough to notice there was a problem. We were called to step in and do something about it. It'd be like a doctor telling someone, hey, you have cancer, but I'm not going to treat you. Like, when there's a sickness, when there's an illness, when there's pain and hurt, we're not called just to notice it, we're called to do something about it. That's what the Samaritan did, and that's what we're called to do as well.